Welcome to the Health Coach Nation podcast. My name is Hailey Rowe, and I'm a sales and marketing coach and LinkedIn lead generation service provider. I work with health, life, and mindset coaches and online service-based business owners to help them get more sales, shift their time to the client-generating activities instead of just the busy work, and overcome that social media overwhelm. Let's get into the show. If you've been looking to attract more of the right kind of clients who are ready to pay for coaching, and you feel stuck in your messaging, your marketing plan, where to begin as an entrepreneur, and even maybe having some mindset blocks, fear of sales or fear of overwhelm and failing and rejection, things like that, I want to invite you to my Coach Inner Circle because it's the A to Z hands-on experience that helps you get in front of your ideal clients, grow your audience and visibility, and it helps you learn sales and marketing skills for life that are timeless and not going to cause you to have to obsess about posting 24/7 and the social media algorithms and things like that. So if you're ready to book clients and you want to grow your coaching business beyond just getting your certification, go ahead and go to haileyrowe.com. You can book a free consult to see if the inner circle is right for you. And what you're about to hear is a little testimonial from one of my clients, Veda. So enjoy, and then we'll get into the episode.
I was in Hailey's Inner Circle group program and I could not recommend it enough. I remember when she first reached out to me, I was very hesitant to invest because I was literally like 3 months into my business. I had no financial build up from my business. I was just starting out, and the fact that I was thinking about going to invest in this program of working with a business coach really scared me, and I almost backed out because I didn't know if I could find the funds to resource it. However, I've always learned that the best businesses are the people who always have a mentor. So I decided to invest in Hailey, and it was the best decision that I've made so far into my business. She helped my business grow in so many ways. I went from barely having any clients, barely booking any discovery calls, to having 28, 30 clients in that 6-month span of working together. I developed a way better mindset around my business to prevent burnout and to nail those discovery calls. I've been able to hire a virtual assistant. I feel so much more confident in the work that I do. I nailed down on my niche. I nailed down on my content. And if it wasn't for her, I truly don't know where my business would be today. And looking back, I'm so thankful I made that investment because I've made all of the money back and all the investment back that I was scared to invest in the first place. So if you're thinking about working with Hailey, I could not recommend it enough. She is the perfect person for if you're just getting off the ground on your business or if you've been in your business for a while. She will help you and support you in any way possible. Even though it was a group program, I personally felt like it felt very one-on-one. Everything that you have to tell her, she takes to heart, she takes into consideration, she will meet you where you at and will guide you every step of the way. So if you're watching this video, this is your sign that you need to invest in Hailey because I promise the benefits and what you will reap out of it will be so worth it.
Comprehensive guide designed to help people overcome procrastination and achieve their goals. Robin's journey started when he worked in his family's retail business, and he realized that his true passion was empowering others. And in 2001, he trained as a life coach in the US, which led him to specialize in accountability coaching and eventually create his Get Resultsology system. And he also has a book, which we'll talk about today. During the 2020 pandemic, Robin faced his own challenges with procrastination, and despite the coaching he has experienced, he still struggles sometimes with distractions, which we'll talk about. So, determined to find a permanent solution, he developed the Get Resultsology system to help others and himself boost productivity. And he's based in England, which is a fun place, and helps clients all over the world boost their income and profits by achieving extraordinary results through accountability coaching. In his spare time, he enjoys his passion of local history. Very cool. Well, thank you for being here, Robin. What a great topic, because we all struggle with distractions. Why is the world so distracting in today's world? I cannot talk today, apparently. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here, and England is so exciting today. Guess what? It's raining.
Yes, yes. So tell me a little bit. Let's kind of go back to 2020 when you were dealing with a lot of procrastinating and such, and kind of tell me a little bit about how this got you fascinated with time management and how you started to get yourself out of that hole.
Sure. It all began with a conversation in over a coffee with my brother and I was bragging because I just got my home-based degree with the British Open University, and I was like, "Yay! Look at me! I got my degree." Brothers, he wasn't very impressed, nevertheless, I said anyway. I said, I got it. I finally got it. Mind you, trust me to take 10 years to do something that I should have done in 6. And he said, yeah, why was that? And I went, oh, procrastination, and laughed and changed the subject. And then when I was driving home, I thought, hang on a minute. You're a life coach, a trained life coach. When you got clients working with you, they don't procrastinate. What's that about? And I thought, oh, well, that's because, I'm holding them accountable, and, they're getting about 80% of the results coming from about 20% of the calls, which are all about accountability. And I thought, yeah, but why do I procrastinate? That's, how do I square that circle? That isn't right. And then I asked myself a couple of very typical coaching questions, which is, where else in your life does this show up? And the answer to that was absolutely everywhere. And the other question was, and what does it cost you? And I thought, oh, God, I don't like the answers I'm coming up with that. And I realized it had cost me financially, health-wise, business-wise, career-wise, money-wise. Every aspect of my life was impacted by it. So I became quite upset and quite angry with myself. And then COVID hit, as you say. And what happened then, of course, was we all got pushed into lockdown. So I had even more time on my hands than I normally had. I've always worked from home, but I had a lot more time on my hands now. And I thought, right, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. Because when I rang my brother, and I said, because he was a mental health professional at the time, and I had a mental pen and paper in hand. I said, oh, just by the way, that conversation earlier, what's the cure for procrastination? And there was a sharp intake of breath at the other end of the line, and a long silence. And no, I don't really know. Well, he might know by now because we've talked about it a few times. But I thought, oh, right, okay. So I started researching it, and I discovered that it's been very, very well researched. In a 10-year period in the early 2000s, over 900 research papers were done into procrastination and productivity. And it's probably one of the most researched fields of human psychology in the world. So I didn't want to, I wasn't going to do any original research, but what I did want to do is I wanted to go to the authoritative research and find the common threads, pull them together. The result was a book. And I wanted to write a book because really although the book is called The Science of Getting Stuff Done, my science is that I went to the science, and then my skill set is, I hope, when people read the book, they will agree, is that I communicate effectively what I discovered, but in layperson's terms, because I never claimed to be a scientist.
Yeah, okay. So let's dig into that a little bit. What is the Get Resultsology system?
Okay, so the Get Resultsology system is a comprehensive guide to everything you could possibly want to know about procrastination and productivity. And I guess the first question that raises is, why would I want to know any of that? Well, the answer is because you need to be more productive. If that's where you want to go, because I'm not really interested in making people more productive. I'm more interested in the results that you get from being more productive, particularly if you work from home, you're a solopreneur, where there's no external accountability and lots of things you can get easily distracted by. The biggest one, of course, is the mobile phone, but which is better known in my household as the dopamine in your pocket. It's an absolute terror. And the system I broke it down into 3 elements, which was the first third of the book is all about understanding, because I believe that it's important to teach people how to fish, not give them the fish. It's an old analogy, but it's a really good one. So and also when you understand what's happening, then you can activate the second step, which is to strategically manage procrastination so that it's no longer a debilitating feature of your life. And then the third step, which is one that is often overlooked, and I realized is the one that's been tripping me up for decades, is momentum. Consistently being productive and building your dreams consistently. And like, so for example, I mentioned in the book, I've got a cupboard full of brilliant schedulers and planners written by some of the very creative, intelligent, clever people. They all work, but only for a while. And I was curious about that. Why do they wear off? Why have I got a cupboard full and not just one that I use again and again and again and again, and it just works? So I concentrate on that in the third section. And then, so that's the three parts of the system. And then the system breaks down into systems. So thus the scientific approach. It should be duplicatable, whoever you are, wherever you are in the world, with the overriding point, which is that the strategies are like a pick and mix strategy, because no one strategy works for the same person in the same way.
Okay. So one of the big frustrations that I hear from a lot of the coaches and entrepreneurs who I work with, because a lot of them are transitioning, they're building their business from nothing, and maybe they're working another job, or maybe they're a parent. And so they feel frustrated about how little time they may have for their business. And they feel kind of like overwhelmed. And so when they sit down to work on their business, sometimes either their brain's tired from all the other stuff they have to do, or they're overwhelmed about where to start because there's so many things. So what's your suggestions for working on that and not procrastinating in your business despite having a lot going on?
So I'm going to come back to, what you've just described there are some of the classic causes of procrastination. And in fact, one of the surveys I looked at, which gave some very startling results, said that of those people that admit to procrastinating, because not everyone admits to it, and there are a lot of people that don't struggle with it, but of those that do, 95% say they procrastinate sometimes. And the rest of those, 1 in 5, 20% say they struggle with chronic procrastination. And I self-identify as a chronic procrastinator. Even now, even having written the book, I still struggle with it every single day. I don't struggle with it anymore, but I'm aware of it and I have to manage it, because it doesn't go away. It's natural. It's in your brain. And so what I want to share with you about that is that to answer your question, I give you 3 avatars, 3 personalities to have in your mind, because it's based on the science. So I went to the science, and just to be clear, I'm going to give you the name of 3 neurotransmitters. Now, I struggle to remember these names because science is not my bag. And for example, when I was at school, my last biology exam, which was the last science exam I've ever done in my life, I got 9%. And that was because I spelt my name right. And my teacher took pity on me because I didn't answer any of the questions. I couldn't remember any of the answers. So I struggled when I was looking at the neuroscience of procrastination. And there is a neuroscience. And what I found out was that there are 3 neurotransmitters that need to be present to get you into peak performance state, to get you into that peak productive feeling of you're unstoppable, I'm really going for it. And they are dopamine, noradrenaline, and acetylcholine. Even as I said it, I was like, oh, what's the next one? What's the next one? My brain is already, if you're a scientist, I get it. But if you're not a scientist and you're like me, it's like, okay, there's got to be an easier way. So what I realized was, well, look at what they do. So the first one is dopamine, and dopamine is the conductor. I called him the conductor. And the conductor lives in the prefrontal cortex of your brain. It's the newest part of your brain. Students struggle particularly with procrastination for a number of environmental reasons. They've left home for the first time, they're free, and so they don't really want to work. But also because their prefrontal cortex isn't fully formed until they're 25, which is a problem because the conductor is in charge. They make all the rational decisions. They're the ones that decide what we rationally want to do today. Another one I toyed with was calling them the captain of the ship, because it's kind of a similar function. But I like the conductor analogy because it's all about bringing all the disparate musicians in an orchestra that make an absolute cacophony of sound when they're not all working together. And the conductor creates the cohesive plan, the cohesive environment in your mind for working on what you want to be productive on. So that he needs, or she needs, to be present. Then the next one is the scholar. Now, the scholar is the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, which is what creates focus. Now, when you're a child, your body naturally produces acetylcholine, and which is why because children have to focus. Your brain is all about survival after all, isn't it, Hailey? It's got to be, how do I get through to the point of to the adulthood without dying? Well, firstly, there's a high dependence on the adults around you, your parents and teachers, particularly your parents. But the other thing is that you need to learn to talk, you need to learn to walk, you need to learn all the skill sets of being an adult human being. And at no point in your life do you learn any of those skills as rapidly as when you're a child. And if you think about it, children are really good at focus. Yeah, they can be easily distracted by gas. I'm really unhappy with that. But otherwise, a child will sit and watch a movie over and over and over again without losing concentration. They'll play with the same toy for hours on end without losing concentration. And this is all the focus, the acetylcholine. Well, in adults, we have to find a way of generating that artificially because we no longer produce it. So we have to create an environment that lets us focus, which is about turning off distractions, for example, which is one of the most common ways that we talk about getting rid of reasons to procrastinate. And that's why. It's because you need to trigger the acetylcholine. And you know when acetylcholine is present because time flies by and you don't realize it. So like yesterday, I looked at my watch and I thought, right, in 15 minutes time, I've got to take the bread out of the oven. This is true. This has actually happened yesterday. I've got to take the bread out of the oven. And then I started working on something on the computer. And after 10 minutes, I looked up and I thought, okay, yep, perfect. That's done. Oh, 5 more minutes for the bread. Looked at my watch and I thought, oh, that was half an hour ago. Completely lost track of time. Totally focused. Acetylcholine is present. That's the second thing. The third thing is what I call the fun-sized warrior. And the fun-sized warrior brings noradrenaline. Now, the big warrior needs to be explained because they are different, which is that your brain basically has two distinct modalities, reward modality and threat modality. And to explain why they're there, you just need to remember what your brain is for. It's for survival and procreation. That's it. Nothing else. Everything else is incidental. Your brain is all about how can I survive and how can I procreate my species? That's it. And so any threat to that is going to be triggered. And that's what your limbic system is all about. That's where the fight, flight, and freeze response is. And when that is triggered by any threat, real or imagined, real like a lion and a wolf trying to have you for lunch, or imagined like an email or a message or bad news that's upset you, it's not a threat to your life right now, but it is a threat. Nevertheless, it's perceived as a threat because it's making you feel anxious and unhappy. That's when the fight, flight, or freeze warrior comes out, and then you're in big trouble because you've got to deal with that, and it's then really hard to work. So what I talk about is, no, we don't want that. We want to be in reward modality, which is where the conductor resides, and the reward modality is shut down by the warrior. But the fun-sized warrior, I like the fun-sized warrior because you just need a little bit of stress in your life. You need to feel a little bit anxious, a little bit on edge, because that just gives you that little boost of the other thing. It's called noradrenaline. Adrenaline, there's words in there for a reason, right? And it just gets you moving and anxious and excited to do something. It's like a fun-sized chocolate bar in your lunchbox, not too much. In fact, James Clear talks about this as the Goldilocks rule, where he says, not too much, not too little, just enough. Too much, and you bring out another neurotransmitter called cortisol, and that's when you're in threat mode. So when you've got those three things, then you get into my other analogy, which I call getting into the groove, which is what you're aiming for. And if you've ever played a vinyl record, you know that the needle has to go down into the groove, and a vinyl record is very fragile. It's very easy to knock the stylus out of the groove. What I call that, in my analogy, that's knock yourself out of focused working productively. So you need the conductor, the scholar, and the fun-sized warrior, and they will, all three of them working together, will keep you in the groove, getting into the groove, like the Madonna song is how I remember it.
Love that song. Okay, so if somebody is trying to understand that, we went over the brain and how it works, but yes. What if they're trying to break the habit of procrastination? Because like you said, you still have to manage it to this day. So what are some ways they can start to manage that procrastination? And aside from just eliminating distractions, which was one of the things I heard. So maybe
absolutely.
That's
so
a good starting point.
I dropped a lot of information on you there. I hope I gave it to you in a way that was easy to understand. But yes, you're right. What you need to do is break the cycle of procrastination. So the first thing, what I think about that is you need to break the pattern. You need to find something that stops you in your tracks, which is why I dedicate a section of the book to understanding it. Because when you understand it, what that means is that you recognize it's happening when it's happening. Not the day after, the week after, the month after, or in my case, decades after, when it's too late. I don't have a doctor. I don't have a time machine. I can't go back in time and say, oh, don't procrastinate today because 20, 30 years from now, you're going to regret it. It's too late. So, but when you identify it, that's when you can then move into, okay, so what strategies have I got? Won't have time today to go into every single strategy that's in the book, but I will give you a highlight, which is a very simple one, which is just do 10 minutes of work. Just decide, well, I'm going to sit down and I'm just going to do 10 minutes. Anybody can do 10 minutes, can't they? Just 10 minutes. And the point about that is it breaks the pattern of procrastination. It's like, okay, so the procrastination today is I'm going to read a book. I'm going to go and tidy the garage. I'm going to go and bake a cake. I'm going to, all the things that we do, to behaviors that we exhibit to procrastinate. But before I do any of those things, which is really you saying I would prefer to go and procrastinate because it feels like more fun. It feels more rewarding. And we might be more passionate about it than the thing that we're doing. That's the other reason that we procrastinate. We're not passionate enough about something. And so just 10 minutes. And what happens in those 10 minutes is that you start to trigger the acetylcholine, the fun-size the scholar comes out, the focus. And what you find is that when you start working on something, at the end of the 10 minutes, you could just say, maybe I could do another 10 minutes. And maybe another 10 minutes. And then in my book, I talk about using the Pomodoro technique, which was invented by an Italian student in the 80s, which is a brilliant technique. It's simply breaking your day down into bite-sized pieces, 25 minutes of work, 5 minutes of break, 25 minutes of work, 5 minutes of break, then a longer break after a couple of hours. I do that. I work 12 Pomodoros a day, or 12 Poms I have to do every single day. But as a minimum is what I give myself. So that is a simple strategy you could try. And then the final, and then there's two other things you could try, which are really useful. I mentioned, and there was a clue in what I said, if you're not passionate about something, you're going to struggle to do it, even if you have to do it. You might be fearful. It might be like, it's got to be done by tomorrow. And when there's a serious deadline and consequences, panic mode kicks in. That always works. But it may be too late for you to do it well, or even to get it done in time. So you have to tie it into a bigger goal. And so that comes to the point I want to make about that I'm a coach, but I don't like goals. I've always instinctively kicked against goals, because the issue I have with goals, as I was looking, I wasn't sure. I just thought, well, if goals are so good, how come New Year's Day resolutions never work? They're notoriously bad. The statistics demonstrate it's something in like the 90% that people set a goal, New Year's resolution, it's a goal, doesn't work. And the reason is simple. The reason is the science shows that they discovered that goal setting sets up a feeling of obligation. And when we feel obligated, we feel stressed. And it's too much stress. It's not too little, not just enough, it's too much. So I'll do something else instead because that's just too stressful to think about it. So in my book, what I say is, well, okay, goals have a value. But the way to think about goals is, what is your personal life vision? Where do you see yourself 15 years from now? And I pick 15 years. It's an arbitrary figure, but it's because it's so far out. You don't feel restricted by, well, I'm not quite sure, is that achievable or not? A doctor, for example, that wants to become an oncologist, you're probably looking at a 15-year route, course to get there, 7 years training as a doctor, then all the years you need of experience and specialist training before you can call yourself an oncologist. I don't know, I'm not an expert, but I think it's about 15 years before you can have a specialty to your name. And so when you get up in the morning and you think about, okay, so I've got to do this XYZ thing today, if you see that as a goal and it feels like an obligation, which triggers stress, then you look for ways of getting rid of the stress, which is Another thing I talk about in the book is the avoidance of pain or the seeking of pleasure. You want to avoid the pain of stress, so go and do something else that's fun. Read a book, watch TV, play games, whatever, right? But if you wake up in the morning and think, yeah, but I really want to be a doctor, and you have a clear vision in your mind of, I'm going to be a doctor, or I'm going to be, I'm going to be the best parent to my kids that I could possibly be. So in 15 years' time, I've got, I'm at their wedding, or I've got grandkids on the way and stuff like that. And that's your vision. It doesn't matter what it is, whatever inspires you. But it means that the little things, they might be quite big things at the time, but they're actually a little part of your journey, feel a lot more desirable to achieve because you've got your mind on the bigger goal. So always tie something to the bigger personal life vision. And the final thing is, if you're in business and you are working from home, I work from home. I've got a wonderful coffee machine. I love my coffee. I'm really good at making it. I'm modest about that too, he says sarcastically about himself. And I have a nice broadband connection, and I have a nice computer, and I have a nice view from my window. But the one thing I cannot recreate from home, that I would have had if I go and worked in the traditional workplace, is accountability. There's no external accountability. And so look at bringing accountability into your life. Now, obviously, it's self-serving of me as an accountability coach, which, by the way, I only decided to do because I realized that was, oh yeah, that's a big part of how you overcome procrastination, and I can do that. I work with clients and do that anyway. But accountability, it doesn't have to be me. It can be any accountability coach. It can be an accountability buddy, which cost-wise, financially, they're free. I mean, there's a time element in cost which you wouldn't get with a coach, and you have to pick the right person. Like I always say, don't pick your partner. It's not fair. You are accountable to them, but in a different way. You certainly shouldn't hold them to hold you accountable in any other way, because that's not a reasonable thing to do. But sure, you can get a buddy, but that is the other thing that you can do because the reason being, there's a lot of reasons why accountability works, but one of them is you just don't want to let somebody down. It's as simple as that. It's a human thing. I just don't want to let them down. Now, if you don't care about the person that you're being held accountable to, then, well, if you've got a boss and you don't like your boss, you don't care, do you? So pick someone that you like.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's such a great point about how if someone else is relying on us, we will make it happen. But if it's just us relying on ourselves, sometimes we just let it go.
Yes.
So great point about accountability. And what does accountability mean to you? Like, what does that look like in some other ways?
It's like the personal life vision I was explaining to you, where you're keeping an eye on the bigger picture. I've got a whole chapter in my book dedicated to explaining why goals are limited and why you need a personal life vision driving them all, because it's about having that, tying your results into the bigger picture. Accountability is about having in your mind that feeling of, I need to get this done, or I'm going to be letting them down, and I've agreed not to do that. I've made a commitment that I'm not going to let them down. Now, the other distinction is let's suppose that you're working on a project for your business, Hailey, and you know that it's like 6 months to a year before it'll be ready to launch, right? Which is a realistic thing to happen. Okay, so I don't know your business, but I do know that that's a common time frame. 3 months, right. 6 months, 12 months is a common time frame. The problem is it feels too ethereal, too unreal. So the analogy I give is like if you're a student and you're told you've got 3 months to do an essay. Oh, you know how this works. Everybody knows who's been a student, even a school student knows this. 3 months. Oh, I'll plan it all out tomorrow, and they come up with this wonderful, elaborate plan of color-coded diagrams and incredible masterpiece of a plan, and they chunk down what they're going to do every day of the week for 3 months, right? And including breaks for going to the bar and socializing. It's all in there. It's perfect. And the reality is 9 times out of 10 they get to it's the final week and they haven't done anything. They procrastinated it all away. And that was because 2 things. First, it didn't feel like it was urgent enough. they couldn't relate to it being, oh, it's got to be handed in next week. But we can all relate into it's got to be done by tomorrow. But 3 months, that's loads of time, right? And the other thing is that with no one holding them accountable, then they don't feel like they need to worry about that. And so what accountability does is it brings in you can have like milestone goals, and it brings in someone saying, I'm going to hold you accountable to those. Okay, yes, you might not fail your course or get a low mark if you miss one milestone goal, but miss enough of them and you know you're in trouble. So, for example, sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. So with milestone goals, what happens is the external accountability. I know what I was going to say. So in 2007, the American Psychological Association looked at university courses, and they found that the courses where the professors and teachers held the students more accountable were significantly more successful in terms of the grades and the pass rates that the students on those courses got than the courses where the teachers were more relaxed and our students are adults. We don't need to worry about what they look after themselves. They're grown-ups now. Well, they're not. And it's not a personal thing. The reality is they don't get such good grades as a body. Obviously, there are always exceptions to the rule. There's always people that are very good at getting grades regardless of the external circumstances. But they discovered that courses where there was a higher level of systematic accountability generated higher results for the students that enrolled on them. Ironically, they also had lower enrollment rates because the students didn't fancy being held that accountable because that didn't sound like fun, but that's what they found out. So accountability is about, it sets up, I suppose another thing, I was talking about the fun size warrior. That's what an accountability buddy or coach is. They're the fun size warrior. They can be that little bit of stress. It's like, oh, if I don't get this done today, Robin's going to be on my case about it, or I'm not going to get the reward that I promised myself, or whatever, carrot and stick, whatever works for you. And that can be the fun size warrior. Literally, it can be, oh yeah. Whereas, if that project that you were working on that was say it's going to take you a year, you may get nothing done for 10 months and then you've got to do it all in the last 2 months. But with an external accountability coach, no, what are you going to get done by the end of the week? What are you going to get done by the end of the month? What are you going to get done by the end of 2 months? Let's agree to it. Let's commit to it. Let's make sure there are some sort of consequences or rewards for achieving it. And of course, let's recalibrate when practical issues mean that, you haven't quite worked out the best time frame anyway.
Yeah, love it. So speaking of accountability and your book, where can people find you and connect with you after today's episode?
Okay, so I'm quite excited this weekend because the book is actually going live on Amazon on April the 22nd. And for the 24-hour window that it's live, that it first goes live, it will be heavily discounted. I'm doing a $10 discount across the whole world, equivalent across the whole world. So people, if they want to buy the physical book in printed form, and also the Kindle version will be heftily discounted as well. But I also, if you don't want to do that, you don't have to do that. I would love your listeners and viewers to be able to get hold of a copy of it now, if they want it, and they can have it as a PDF, a complete unabridged version of it as a PDF. Cool. And to get that, they just have to go to reallyusefultips.com. That's really as in I could really do with an umbrella today. Useful as in because it would keep the rain off, and tips as in what you give a waiter. Don't know why I use that analogy because the last bit never works, but it doesn't have nothing to do with the umbrella in the rain. But reallyusefultips.com, and you can download the unabridged PDF of the book.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with our audience and sharing all these awesome tips and how our brain works. I think a lot of people are going to be like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense why I do the things I do, and have some starting points where they can work on their procrastination and productivity. So thank you for being here.
It's been my pleasure.
Thanks so much for listening to this podcast. And if it's really helpful for you, I'd really appreciate if you share it and or leave a written podcast review. This tells the podcast sites that our show is useful and it will be promoted to more people that way. Thanks again.